everybody, welcome to another edition of Natural Crafts. Today we're going to make seashell mobiles, and I'm going to highlight 3 different ways to do them. So one is drilling and tying on the shells, another is gluing, and the third is stacking. Now for this project I use seashells, driftwood, and these little bells so that if I want to put it outside, it's going to have a wind chime effect. Thin craft wire and hanging rope, and drill bits that are the same size of each. As well, a sponge, some eye hooks, a glue gun, and scissors. For the first method, let's do the drilling and the tying. And as I mentioned, you want a drill bit that's a little bit bigger than the wire you're going to use to hang the shells. So stretch out your wire. I use double the length that would normally take if I was just stringing it straight. So it is a long piece. And some eye hooks depending on how many strings you want to run. You may not think you have these lying around, but look in that little box that you use to hang pictures. Usually they have some in there. Start by arranging the driftwood in a way that you think it's going to look the nicest, and then take those little eye hooks and start with one end. I'm going to put 3 different strings, so I'm just putting an eye hook in, and it's easy to screw them in just with your fingers. So put one on one side where you think it's a nice balance, then put one in the middle, and then that's where you have to measure to make sure that the one on the end is the same distance as the first and second one. So now that you have it, you can see I put it on the bottom so that it'll hang nicely once I do have them up. And if you don't have any driftwood, don't worry, you can always use something else. So here someone's used a nice piece of wood, someone else has used just a basket top. You can even use a piece of metal or something that you found crafty, and just tie off the wire if it's something you can't drill through. I've got a great technique for drilling into the seashells. First off, look for where you want to drill your hole. We want to drill this up through the middle, and that way you won't see the wire as much when you hang it. So find your spot, rest it on the sponge, and then give it a couple of pulses with the drill until you get all the way through. And the softness of the sponge really helps prevent it from breaking. So there you go, you've got your hole. And then now we're going to go on to one of the flatter ones. We want to put the hole closer to the top because that's where we're going to run our string. And if you don't live near a beach, you can always get seashells at the dollar store. And then you'll see it starting to make its way through. I would say it probably takes around 5 to 6 pulses before it goes all the way through. But you'll feel it when it goes through, and then just wipe off any of the excess and you're all set. So just go ahead, drill into all the rest of them so that you have them ready and set up. Now of course you can swap the order, but next what I did is I drilled the holes for the rope that we're going to use to hang it. So change your drill bit to reflect the size. You see the drill bit's a little bit bigger than the rope, and make sure that you have enough string because we're going to string it through the holes and then we're going to tie it off into knots. So change out your drill bit and put in a new one, and just make sure your drill bit length is long enough so that the drill bit will go all the way through your driftwood piece. Now I use the drill a lot with my other crafts, so I'm very familiar with it, but if it's the first time you're using it, you may want to have somebody else hold it for you, or you may want to set it up in a vise so that it's secure and it's done very safely. So here you go, just finish off your 2 holes, and then now you're going to take your rope and just simply string it through your holes, and then you're going to use a couple of knots to tie it off at the end. Just make sure that your knots are big enough so that the rope won't come back up through the hole. So I just used a couple of knots on each side and made sure that it was secure. And of course you can simply just tie the rope around the driftwood. You don't even need to drill the holes, but I just like the look that it gives when it's gone right through. One of the great things about doing natural crafts is you get to spend a lot of time outdoors, but if you're not lucky enough to live near a place where you can find driftwood, I'm just going to give you a little hint of what it's like. Don't forget to check out some of my other videos because I make amazing things with driftwood. Okay, let's tie on our shells, and what we're going to do is we're going to start with the bottom of the wire. So I use these little bells to attach to the bottom. You can use something like a shell, but something that's heavy sometimes I find it keeps the wire really straight. But I love these little bells because they have a nice little jingle to them. But using the bottom of the long string of wire, you're just going to wrap the wire through whatever you're attaching to the bottom. Again, if it's the shell, that's fine, but just keep winding the wire through. and then just twist it off, and it's really, really secure. So that's the bottom part. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to start stringing through our first shell. So just take the top end of the wire, string it through the back of the shell, and then just bring it down till you find out how much distance you want between the bottom and then the first shell. Once you've established how much distance, then run the wire through the back again, so you're kind of creating a loop. Because you want the wire to end up being straight up and down, I also ran it through as if I was making a knot, and then that way it tightens it up right at the top of the shell. And continue on with this process, taking your next shell and then putting the string through the back, and then before you run the string through again, make sure you have that distance between the shells that you want, and then you bring the wire through again and close it off by tying off that knot. And as you can see, even though you needed long string to make sure you could tie off these knots well enough, it can get a little tangly. So just go through slowly, pull your wire through as needed, and then just take your time. And continue on until you've done all of the shells in this first stringed row. And it is really essential that you use a very thin craft wire or even a strong string or very, 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 very thin rope, because as you can see, you have to manipulate the wire quite a bit. And if you have too thick of a wire, it would be really hard to make things line up smoothly. So keep going and add as many shells as you want, making sure that you put the distance between them that you really prefer. And this first string will become the template to make sure all your other ones are the same distance between the shells. And once you've finished adding all your shells, you can just simply use the top of the wire to tie it off on the hanging hook and put that wire through several times. Again, you want it to be nice and strong and sturdy, so I just ran it through probably about 8 or 9 times. And then I kind of wrapped it around close to the top of the hanging hook and then made a final knot and clipped it, and there you have it. So this is the interesting thing about doing crafts. I often find that I stumble across different ideas, because originally I was just going to have 3 hanging shell wires all the same distance. But when I had them lying down and I had attached this one, I realized that the shells look a little bit better even if they're a little offset. That was just my feeling anyway. So whether you choose to make your second or third row offset, or whether you want to hang them the same distance, whatever works for you, it looks gorgeous either way. All right, now let's move on to our second method, which is the gluing method. But before that, let's take a calming nature break. Now for this method, it's fairly similar, except you need double the amount of shells, because we're going to, in most cases, be gluing them back to back, but we only need the length of string or length of wire that you're going to use, so you don't have to double up the length of wire. So just cut your wire to the length that you want, and then the glue gun is your best friend here. Now I find the key to this one is gluing the wire to the shell first, so that you've got it centered both at the top and at the bottom, and then run your glue along the side of each shell, making sure that you've chosen shells that are about the same size, and then just simply glue them together over top of each other. Make sure that wire has been glued on and that the shells are glued back to back. Just move on to the next one. If you have one, like I'm going to show you here, that you really couldn't put 2 shells back to back, you're going to run the wire along the side that you don't want to have seen, basically, so the inside part. So just simply run that wire through, making sure that it sticks on to the back. And then if you need to, add a little bit more glue just to make sure that it's secure. Because if you want to hang these guys outside, you want to make sure that it's really on securely so that the wind doesn't knock them apart or knock them off of the wire. So give it a little extra glue, and then again, making sure that you are putting the 2 shells back to back using the glue to attach the wire first. And once you get the hang of it, it goes pretty quickly. The key is just making sure you have shells that are the same size. So now let's look at using these shells. These are kind of like snail shells. So they're obviously not something that's super easy to put together, but if you do the same technique by gluing the wire at the top and the bottom of the shell and just pressing the wire on to make sure that it is attached, then you can take the other kind of snail shell back and then put it in a different way so that it closes off the hole. So it really adds kind of a different flair or a different look to that one. So that's how you can just adapt based on the different shell sizes. And with this method, you can start at the top and work your way down, tie off your bell, and again, attach the whole string to your driftwood the same way that we did with the first one. But I find that this method moves really, really quickly. So if you need something that is a quick craft, this one can do the trick. And last but not least, the stacking method. Now you still need to drill into your shells, and if you're going to use driftwood like I have here, the only other thing you're going to need is little beads or spacers in between them. So as you can see, I used the same technique, added the bell on the bottom, then I added a bead and a shell and a piece of driftwood, and I just kept working my way up. This way you don't have to wrap the string around things. So if you enjoyed the video, don't forget, hit that like button, and I have over 30 videos of great crafts that you can make from things found abundantly in nature. And we have an assortment of videos for every season, so don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell, and you'll be the first one to get notified of new videos as well. So get out there and keep crafting.